Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Womack-Williams. I'm the State Education's Issues Director for Texas AFT's Bridges Institute for Professional Development. This morning we have Carol and Rebecca. Carol is a teacher in Northside ISD right outside of San Antonio, and Rebecca is a teacher in El Paso ISD, way far out there, probably away from most of us in this room. But anyways, this morning they're bringing differentiating instruction to you. This is a great training. I went through this back, I think, in like 2014, and it was a real eye-opener about how to properly differentiate instruction in your classroom. So I hope you all walk away with a wealth of knowledge in how you can improve your classroom pedagogy. I did send everyone an email with the participant handout. However, I will also drop it in the chat box, and then you can just click on it and download it to your computer so that you can follow along or print it out, whatever method works best for you. Other than that, I will turn it over to Carol and Rebecca.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Good morning. I'm just making sure I'm unmuted, everyone. Welcome to Strategies for Student Success, Differentiated Instruction. My name is Carol Villarreal. I'm a reading specialist in Northside ISD, which is in San Antonio. Rebecca, would you like to give us a little information about yourself?
Sure. I'm Rebecca Blanco. It's nice to be here with you all today. I am going into my first year of pre-K3 this year. This is my 15th year teaching. I am a dual language teacher in El Paso ISD.
So welcome. This is one of the modules for Strategies for Student Success. And let's go ahead and take a look at the annotations because you're going to be using them. Now, if you don't have annotations available, that is fine. You can unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat as well. But those of you that are on a PC or like an HP, if you go up to the top where it says view options, and you click on that, you're going to see the annotate. And it gives you all the different tools you can use for annotation. You might also see it at the bottom where you see your mute and your stop video. You also have the reactions as well. We're going to be using those throughout. And again, if you don't have those available, that's fine. You can put that information in the chat as well. This is research-based. All our trainings for AFT, are researched based. They're not anything that we're just making up. It is research. And one thing we do want to make sure you do is keep yourself muted unless asked to unmute, so that way everyone can hear the presentation. And if you need to step away, that is fine. Have your phones muted so that way you're in full attention with us as well. Everyone should have access to the participation handbook. So you'll have that available. If you've printed it out, that's great. If not, just have it linked or up on your computer so you can refer to it as needed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the AFT mission. One big thing for PD is that one big thing for our mission as AFT is that we are real big about high quality public education. And one way to help with that high quality public education is to provide high quality research-based professional development, which is what we provide in AFT. So let's go ahead and take a look at the objectives of the session. Go ahead and just take a moment and read these objectives to yourself. So we're going to be looking at two things today. We're going to be looking at the tiered lessons, how to do that correctly, and then how to create a choice board. Does anyone have any questions about these or anything? Is this what you were expecting out of this presentation today? Was there anything else that you were expecting to learn today on differentiation that's not listed in the objectives? I'm just checking the chat. Looks like no one's having any questions. I know it's kind of early in the morning, so hopefully everyone has their coffee ready to go. Since this is research-based, let's take a look at the researchers of this module. You can see there's a huge list of researchers that are all within the module. The major ones that we're going to be looking at are Sternberg, Conklin, and Tomlinson. A lot of you probably have heard of Tomlinson. She's a huge advocate for differentiation. And some of the others you may have heard of, like Vygotsky. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him in your college years. I'm trying to think. Berner might be another one that a lot of you have heard of as well. So what is differentiation? So let's take a look. Using the annotation tools or in the chats, I want you to annotate and place a mark next to each box that has a component of differentiation from what you know so far. So when you look at these items here on the screen, place a check mark or a heart or a star next to the boxes that are components of differentiation. Okay, so tiered lessons. Choice. Variety. Qualitative. Give you about a minute to add more, and then we'll go and look to see what is actually differentiation. Wow, you guys are good. I see no one has said anything about centers in the classroom, which is great, because I'm going to explain that in just a moment.
I see a lot of good answers in the chat as well. And so they're putting in the same stuff that everyone's looking at and checking off on the actual slide.
Choice, variety, tiered, yes. Jamie, can you put the link to the chat or to the handbook again in the chat, please? Because I see people are asking for it. Thank you.
It should be on there now, Tammy. I know you were asking for it, so it should be popping up for you.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at what is actually, and I need to clear the annotations. So let's take a look at what is actually differentiation. So we have it's qualitative. It offers tiered lessons of varying degrees of difficulty dealing with similar contents. Allows students to choose with teacher direction the route of their learning. Provides a variety of assignments within a unit of instruction. So the one thing I did notice that some people did, I did have a couple people that said has centers. Let me just explain that just because there's a center does not mean it's differentiated. It's the actual assignments within the center that's considered differentiated. So after going over that last slide, take a look at this quote and what resonates with you with this quote. You can either unmute yourself or put it in the chat. So what's important about this quote? It's not about the number of activities, it's about the quality. So how is that differentiation? Okay, so it's meeting the student's needs. Yes, Rebecca, thank you. What else can you say about this quote when it comes to differentiation? It's not about piling on the work, exactly. A lot of people say, oh, well, if they're in a pre-AP class, we just give more assignments. No, that's not necessarily true. It's not the more, it's the quality. It's the type of assignment that you give them. High quality, not busy work. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Nancy.
And that goes not only for students who are struggling, but also GT students. So just because they're GT, throwing more assignments at them doesn't mean that you're differentiating. It's the depth and the complexity that goes into it.
Yes, exactly. So let's go and take a look at the philosophical approach of differentiation.
Okay, so now that we've kind of looked at some of the things that differentiation is, we need to realize that it is guided by some general principles, right? So when we're thinking of differentiated instruction, we actually do have to keep in mind that we're going to have ongoing assessment and adjustment as part of it, right? Which means we know where our students are. This is why we constantly have those beginning of year, middle of year, end of year assessments, and then also the holistic and the formative, summative assessments that we have in our classrooms, because we need to know where they're at all times. We need to know who our students are. Otherwise, how can we meet their needs, right? We need to have clear learning goals. The clear learning goals are going to be based on those assessments which we've given to them. Of course, this is what guides our instruction, right? We have those ongoing assessments and we know, hey, these are areas of refinement, these are their strengths. So what do we need to look at for each student? What are their goals? We have respectful tasks, which means if we've already outlined what their needs are and what their areas of their strengths and their weaknesses are, we're going to make sure that those tasks that we give them are going to be respectful. So one thing that we have to do in like the lower grades and maybe even the upper grades, right? When you're talking about math and you're talking about problem solving, you know where your students are. And if you have something that's like problem solving and they're having issues with comprehension, what are some of those things that you're going to do to help them understand what those words are? So if there's word problems and they're having trouble with reading, what are we going to do to help them out? Either taping it or having somebody read to them, and then they can continue the work, right? So you're being respectful with the way that they are learning and where they're at. Okay, we have also flexible groupings, which means you do not have stagnation. That means based on how they're doing that week or that unit, you can move the kids. It's not like you're always going to be in this one group for the entire year. There may be times where you're ahead of everybody in a certain area or a certain unit. You might be able to get that, down easy. And then the next unit, you might be struggling. So you have to be able to use those flexible groupings to meet them where they're at. And then we have to build community, right? So within these, whoa, I'm so sorry. This has 2 number 3s. I didn't realize that. But the 5th one is building community. So we are going to make sure that within all of these things, we are building community. Can you tell me, or can anybody unmute and tell me, what do you see or what causes you to stop and think about these general principles of differentiated instruction? Is there anything that kind of stands out to you as you're looking at them?
What really stands out for me is the ongoing assessment. It's not just a one assessment. You're doing assessment all the time to make sure that you're differentiating their instruction as it's needed.
Right. And for me, the big thing that stood out was that we have to have all of them because they build on each other. So if you notice, like you said, one of the major things is that assessment that we constantly are checking to see how they're doing. You're going to be able to do the clear learning goals, make those clear learning goals. You're going to be able to have respectful tasks. You're going to have flexible groupings, all based on that assessment, right? And it's going to keep feeding into each other. So all of that, because you have flexible groupings, then you'll be able to build community, because you're not going to have kids who are in one group the entire year and not being able to communicate or to work with the other kids in the group, in the class. Okay. And if you need any more information on this, you can look on page 3 of your participant handbook, and there is some more reading in there about this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a real quick brain break. Okay. So this is a Wuzzle, and if you need to step away real quick to go grab a drink or go take care of your needs, you can do that right now. There's some Wuzzles, and you're going to try and figure out what they are. Okay. Give you about 1 minute, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
As you come up with an answer, you can also put it in the chat as well to kind of start the ball rolling on looking at these different Wuzzles. So we've got pigs in a blanket, hole in one, countdown.
These are leftovers. We had an apple turnover.
Ring around a rosy. Good job. You guys are on a roll on this one. And this is something you can do in the classroom as like a brain break, especially for your upper level students, just to give them a chance to have a brain break. And also it's high level thinking too, because they have to figure out what is that saying, because it really doesn't say it. So this is just an example of something you can use in your classroom as well. Oh, that's me. So what we're going to be looking at is I want you to take a look at this picture. What is the difference that you see in these two images? Can someone unmute themselves and tell me what is the differences that you see in these two images?
How about what is this? What is this actually showing you, and what is this showing you?
What are the pictures that might help first?
You have scaffolding on the left and stairs on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a scaffolding and then we have stairs. So what do you think this has to do with differentiation? So scaffolding, yes, we do a lot of scaffolding when we're doing differentiation. One has people on different levels.
Lisa said teamwork. Kimberly saying it's incremental.
Multi-steps.
Yeah, the multi-steps. How about how difficult they are to create? Can you think about that? What does it take to create scaffolding versus a flight of stairs? Elisa said building on prior knowledge.
Stairs are easier to ascend. So we're going to look at the difference between tiering and scaffolding. So we have a little chart here. So under scaffolding, we have that it's immediate. It's done on a daily basis. It's done for the whole group, not individual. It can aid tiering, and it's not always planned. It's on the go. It's those things that you just do as a good educator. Under tiering, it's planned into your lessons. It's not done daily. It can be done with individual students in mind, and it's leveled based on needs. And we have some icons under tiering. We have a heart, a star, and a smiley face. What do you think those icons mean? Just based on what we've talked about tiering, why would we use icons? What do you think? Just based on what you know. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide. And we're going to look at what tiering looks like in certain classrooms. So we have some examples, and we're going to show you what the icons mean when we're doing tiering. So our first one is under elementary. So Rebecca, if you want to go ahead and turn to the elementary one.
Put time.
There. And you're going to explain that one, I think.
I'm sorry, my internet kind of kicked me out for a minute. So if you take a look at the elementary example, if you can look here, we actually do have icons that go with each level. So we have an above level, which is going to be the treble clef. We have a bass clef for on level, and then we have a note here, right? So this is 2/4 note, no, 2/2. I'm not sure what notes they are, but there's notes here, but they denote what level they're on, right? So this is a second grade example. And the actual Common Core math content that they need to know is use addition to find the total number of objects arranged in rectangular arrays with up to 5 rows and up to 5 columns. You're going to write an expression to express the total as a sum of equal addends. So students who are above level will be able to understand this is equivalent of multiplication, right? So they'd be able to understand 2 times 5 is equal to 10. And they'd be able to make an array with 2 rows and 5 columns, right? And then on level, they'd be able to do the adding, right? The multiple adding. So you repeated adding of 5 groups of 2, and again, you'd make that array of 5 in a column and 2 rows. And then the below level might not be able to get all the way up to that, right? So the 5 by 5, they might not be able to do that. So they may be doing something like repeated addition of 2 plus 2, and they might make an array of 2 by 2. Or, you know, you can add 2 plus 2 plus 2, which would be an array of 2 by 3, right? So that would be one way, but you do denote it based on that, that icon that you have assigned for that level. Okay.
Okay, so the middle school example is an ELA example. In 7th grade, and I think it might be throughout the whole state of Texas, at least in my district, 7th grade usually reads the play The Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And one thing that they're really, it's one of the skills they look at is theme. And one thing I do want to denote here is that I would not put above level assignment, on level assignment, and below level assignment. I would just use the icons. So that way kids don't feel like if they're a below level, they're not going to know that it's a below level assignment. So I would just tell them, okay, you're going to do the smiley face for this assignment, or you're going to do the star, or you're going to do the heart. And all they need to know is what the assignment is, not that it's a below level assignment, on level, or above level. So for this assignment, they're, sorry,
I like
Rebecca?
that. I was saying, I like how you're saying that, but also mixing up where the icons are placed. That would also make sure that they're not sitting there and saying so-and-so is below. Yeah.
Not always put in heart as the below level. Yeah, you're mixing it up so that way they don't always know, okay, well, I know the heart's a below level assignment. You're right about that too, Rebecca. Thank you. So for this assignment, we're looking at theme, and I'm tiering it based on ability. So the above level, they're just going to read, after reading Christmas Carol, the students are going to identify themes and give examples from the text to support the theme. They're not given any examples. They're not given a list to go off of. They're just doing it on their own. On level, after reading Christmas carols, students will identify themes using a graphic organizer. Students are provided the list. So they're provided a list of themes with theme words to give examples from the text to support the theme. So as you can see so far, they're still having to give that text evidence, which is very important in the higher grades for reading. Your below level students, after reading Christmas carols, students will identify which theme is represented in the story with provided list and give examples from the text to support the theme. Again, they're still having to provide that text evidence, but this time they're given a list of possible themes of like materialism, home, greed, success, freedom, and hope. There may be more than one correct answer. So using that list, they go in and find examples of that theme in the story. So I've tiered it based on their ability. Can they identify it without any help? They just need a list of examples of themes, and they can use that list to find the theme. Or do they need to be given certain themes and they have to just go find the text evidence? The one thing that's not changed is the story and the providing the text evidence, because that's very important when it comes to the state assessment. They need to be able to provide that evidence. So let's go ahead and take a look at a science example for high school. Again, we've got a little star, we have a smiley face, and then we have, I'm not sure what that picture is, a picture of something.
I think they're roots.
Is it roots? So then again, I would not put above level, on level, or below level, just give them the icon. So for this one, we're looking at this circulatory process. So above level, they're going to describe the circulatory process and describe ways in which one's health can be affected by the process if the process fails to function properly. So they have a very good idea and understanding of the process, and they can describe it without any extra support. On level, they're going to detail the process of the circulatory system. They're going to draw a diagram to illustrate the process. So they understand the circulatory system and they can draw the diagram from what they understand. You're below level, you're going to list the organs of the body involved in the circulatory system. So they have a general idea of what the circulatory system is. They should probably already know the organs that are involved, so they can list those. And they're going to also draw a diagram that represents the process of the circulatory system. Someone asked if this is a modification. It's very similar to modifying, but you're not modifying the curriculum. You're not changing, because modification is you're changing the actual curriculum. Here, they're still expected to know the same things. You're just making the process easier for them. And that's the difference between modifications and accommodations. It's like our modifications, they may be reading at a 4th grade level and they're at 6th grade. Modifying would be giving them a 4th grade text. We're not modifying here, we're just giving them the support that they need on the grade level text. So let's go ahead and take a look at a language learner.
So again, we're going to take a look at a language learner standard. This is in Texas. So the ALPS that we have, the cross-curricular second language acquisition and speaking, it's respond orally to information presented in a wide variety of print, electronic, audio, and visual media to build and reinforce concept and language attainment. So as you can see, we've chosen to use fruit in this example. So of course your icons can be whatever you want it to be. So we've showed you like music, we've showed you just some random stuff, right? And then we have fruit in this one. What they're going to be expected to do is to respond to the question, who are the characters in the Three Little Pigs? So an above level student, when we're talking about ALPS, would actually be able to say, given the sentence stem, the characters in the Three Little Pigs were, and they're going to give you all of the characters. They're going to say the Three Little Pigs and the wolf, right? They can tell you that. And it's going to be just by giving them the sentence stem, they'll be able to run with it. And if you notice, there are no visuals here. You're just asking them, hey, who were the characters in the Three Little Pigs. And if you give them the sentence stem, they're able to read it and they're able to think through it without any visual aids. So if we go to on level, right, which would, if you notice, I've kind of added what we would code them as when we're doing TELPAS. So an above level would be an advanced high, and advanced would be on level, right? So we would do given the sentence stem above and giving them some visuals, right? To be able to help them form their sentence. So the characters in the Three Little Pigs were, and then you can point to them, who were they? The Three Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf, right? Now, somebody who is a beginner or intermediate, or somebody who might be below level, and we have our pineapple group here, it says, give sentence stem on the board and visuals with the name. So they might not be able to even come up with the actual names, but they might be able to, hey, I remember when I saw that. And you have the visual aid plus the words that would have them, those are the prompts that would help them to fill in the blanks. The characters in the Three Little Pigs were Three Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf, okay?
So now we're going to do a little practice. We're going to be putting you in some breakout rooms. And what you're going to do in the breakout room is you're going to create 3 assignments, or at least start creating an assignment on some concept or content. So you can choose as a group of what you would like to tier. Use symbols to represent each level, like we did in our examples. Think about how you can differentiate for your ELLs when needed within each tier, or have a separate tier for them. So the ELLs do not always have to be a separate tier. They can be tiered, they can be within a certain tier in the assignment as well. Like using sentence stems would be a good example of how you can differentiate for them, or giving them a list of words. Be prepared to share out your examples when we come back. So we're not giving you a lot of time. We're only giving you about 7 minutes to do this. So if you don't get it all planned out, that's fine, but just give us an example of what the activity would be and how you would tier them into the 3 different tiers: the beginning, or the on level, above level, on level, and below level, and how you would differentiate for your ELLs in that assignment as well. Before we put you into the breakout rooms, does anyone have any questions? This is in your participant handbook on page 6. And there's also a handout in 2A and 2B in our handout section as well to help you with this as you're working with your groups. So please unmute.
Okay, welcome back. I think we have everybody now here. We'd like to invite you guys to go ahead and share out some of those assignments you came up with, and maybe some of those symbols that you were able to create for your 3 assignments.
Let's start with room 1. If you remember what room you're in, I know we have 5 rooms, so we should have 5 people giving examples. So if you want to unmute yourself and just kind of talk through what you guys talked about in your breakout room. Looks like Sharon's sharing in the chat that they created 3 assignments. They're all going to read the same text. Tier 1 is going to focus on the questions from the text. Tier 2 is going to focus on inference. And tier 3 is going to focus on understanding. Okay. So you guys are doing a reading assignment. Does anyone else have any other examples of what they discussed in their breakout room? I've got one group, I don't know what room Sharon was in. And they're all going to do writing with it. Yes, writing is very important, especially now that writing's embedded in every test now.
Well, I'm not sure what breakout room we were in, but we
That's
came
fine.
up with a math idea. And it's addressing the TEK about how to represent fractions using pictorial models. And so we thought that above level kids could, given a fraction, can you draw the model? On level kids, given the fraction, can you use blocks to show the fraction? And then below level kids, given the fraction and choices, can you pick which one correctly models the fraction?
Good job. I like that. The different, using the manipulatives and everything too.
I like how you did that. And you can definitely incorporate you can even change it up based on their level. If you're using like the unifix cubes, you can also do, fractions doing that way, depending on who you're talking to. And so you're like, okay, look, this is how many you're supposed to have. You're supposed to have 8. 8 of, 4 out of the 8 are supposed to be whatever color, and 4 of them are supposed to be whatever color. But I like that. I like how you're using those manipulatives and bringing it in, because they do definitely need that tactile learning.
Thank you, Robin, for sharing. Does anyone else have examples? No one else wants to share? Like, there's no right or wrong answers. We'd like to hear what you have as examples of how you would tier.
Well, I can't remember also what group I was in, but we were talking about plate tectonics. We kind of got possibly the above level and below, but we couldn't decide on the one at the level. So we thought maybe for below, we can have pictures of the actual landforms, the formations, and have the students match the pictures and the descriptions. And then the above level, we actually came up with trying to have the students actually model, like build a model of the actual formations.
So can I ask you real quick what the actual TEK is?
We just picked on plate tectonics. We just covered land formations.
So land formations, like knowing about them.
Yes.
So then your on level would probably be spot on whatever they're telling you to do in the TEK.
In the TEK, okay.
When you're actually forming your above and below, you're going to look at your TEK and say, what is it exactly that they need to do? So that's your on level, right?
That's on level, okay.
That's going to be your on level. So then when you go from there, then you can plan above and below. So once you know what your on level, what their specific expected their TEK is, then you can plan the above and below there. So just kind of keep that in mind. So keep the TEKs in mind. That's why we need to keep them. Like, I don't know if you noticed when we were actually looking at them. Let me go back real quick. And when we were looking at them, we did include the TEK, right? Or the standard. That way we know this is our on level. This is what we need to look at. And then we can go based on that. We can tier up and tier down.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, usually if you know what they need to know, the hard part is, okay, how can we go above and below? So you actually got the above and the below, and the TEK would be what they need to know. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so we had a math example, we had a reading example, we had a science example. We have tiered vocabulary. So we have tier 1 is just cars, different types of cars. Tier 2 would be varying shapes of cars. And tier 3 would be what makes the car run. Okay, so vocabulary can be tiered. So Sharon said that she prefers to have them work in small groups with project-based learning, even though it's coronavirus time, are able to work in groups online. The practice of tiering specifically is to make the groups homogeneous, but assign them to so students support and build from each other. Yes,
and
when you're doing your groupings.
We're going to be looking at that. So yes, definitely PBLs are great. And there's a way to do that too. So one way of differentiation is tiering, right? But there are other ways. So we're going to be looking at that in a little bit. Okay.
So now we're going to look at the how to differentiate using content, process, product, readiness, interest, and learning profiles.
Right. So we kind of just talked about how to differentiate based on the tiering, right? So based on where they're at. So what are they able to do, their abilities, right? Now that we can take that a little bit further and we can look at what we can do. So this is what we have control of, the content, the process, and the product, right? And we can differentiate this according to our students, what they bring to the table, right? Their readiness, their interest, and their learning profile. Now, if you could take a little bit of time, I'm going to give you about 2-3 minutes to look in your handbook, pages 7 through 9, just so you can read a little bit about how we differentiate the stuff that we can control by the stuff that the kids bring to the table. Okay, so we're looking in pages 7 through 9 of the handbook. And again, if you need the handbook, I'm going to go ahead and share it with you in the chat. Tammy, I'm going to go ahead and try to share it again, okay?
And Tammy, if you can't open that, what Rebecca just dropped it in the chat box, private message me your email address and I will email it to you.
Robin is having the same issue, I think. Robin, I just sent it, so check the chat again. If it's not, then you can also private message or email Jamie and she can send it to you. Okay, so since some of y'all are not able to see it, I'm gonna go ahead and share it with you on the screen. Can you see it on there now? Can you see it, Carol? Okay, so this is part D. So some of the things that I did want you guys to take a look at, right, are the content, process, and product, which is what we were talking about. The content is what should students learn and take away from the experience. The process is activities designed by the teacher to ensure that students use key skills to make sense of the content and other essential ideas and information. And the product, which is basically what they're going to make, right? What is the product that they're going to create to show that what they've learned. Then when we're talking about the readiness, right? It's when students, one of the things that I really like to read here was, when students encounter assignments that are moderate levels of difficulty, they are more likely to sustain their efforts to learn even in the face of a difficulty than when assignments are too difficult or they're under challenging. So again, you're looking at their readiness, how they're learning, where are they at, being respectful of them, what they're doing with their learning, right? Where they're at, meeting them. And then if the interest. So of course we talk about interests. What are their interests? What do they like to do? Theory of flow, a state of total absorption that comes from being lost in an activity that is so satisfying that the participant loses track of time, wariness, and everything else but the activity itself. Flow requires that the participant be interested in the activity in which he or she is engaged. So think about even when you've been to trainings, right? You're more likely to absorb that information and you're more likely to participate if it's something that you're interested in, right? And even if maybe you weren't interested when you got there, but you see, hey, this is like an awesome way to learn, or they're teaching in a different way, that's going to help you, right? And then we have the learning profile. A person's culture shapes all aspects of a person's life. When a classroom is structured in a way that is a poor match for a person's cultural expectations, learning may be hampered and achievement lowered. So we do have to take into consideration not just where they're at academically, but also like what are they bringing to the table as far as their culture, right? Because that could also impact their learning. Now that we've looked at that, let's take a look real quick at what process versus product would be, right? So we're going to look at group 1. Okay, so the first thing is to collect pictures or web pages from the internet related to the content, right? Or B, you can analyze how pictures or web pages reveal ideological differences. So these are the 2 things that you can do. You can collect pictures or analyze, right? What are they differentiating here, the process or the product? So remember what we said, that a product is something that they're going to create. So are they creating anything here yet? So would they be differentiating by the process or the product in this example?
The process.
Right, because one group is right? One way to do it is to collect the pictures, right? And the other one is to analyze. So you haven't really created anything, you're just kind of looking at it, right? You're absorbing, you're observing. So let's take a look at the next one, group 2. You could either complete the graphic organizer. So let's keep that in mind, right? You're completing a graphic organizer. Are you making something? Are you doing something? And then the other one is respond to the question, was the rivalries between the X and the X inevitable? So are they differentiating by the process or the product?
So they're still processing.
But take a look at this though. They're completing a graphic organizer.
Okay.
So does that make sense? They're actually
So
creating.
they're arriving at the product.
Right. So they're creating something, they're making their product. So do you see the difference where here they're just more collecting information and here they're analyzing, right? They're still kind of looking at it. But here they're actually creating a graphic organizer and they're responding to this. So they're actually going to have to do something, create something, whether that be a writing or the graphic organizer, or whatever it is that they're going to do to show what they know. Okay. And let's take a look at group 3. It says, follow the instructions to fill out the risk assessment form. And then B is design indicators independently and fill out the risk assessment form for the Cuban Missile Crisis. What do you guys think? Is that process or product? And think, do they actually have something that they're creating or that they're doing?
Yes, processing.
And let's read through it, right? Follow the instructions to fill out the risk assessment form, right? They're creating because they're filling something out, right? And here they're designing, it's a little bit more, right? Design indicators independently and then fill out the risk assessment form for the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? So they're actually creating something. The risk assessment form is that one piece that they're going to have like a physical thing that they're actually doing. And it might not even be physical, it might be virtual now, right? Because of the way that we have been this year, but they're actually creating something to show what they've learned. Lois, the pictures, they're not creating them, they're just collecting them. And the other one is they're analyzing, but they haven't really created anything. It's still kind of like formulating. So that's still process, right? You're still kind of processing there, but they haven't done anything actual with the pictures yet. So if you were to say like, let's sort them into a certain, let's put them into a T-chart. This is what one part of the T-chart, this is the other part of the T-chart. Once you've analyzed, once you've observed and all that, then that would be the product. but they haven't quite done anything with the pictures yet, which is why it's still in the process. Okay, so points of intersection, we can intersect, right? We can do one point of intersection, which is the top part that we control, the content, the process, or the product, and we can intersect with one of those things that the children bring to the table, which is their learning profile, their interest, or their readiness, right? So, like I said, we can only use one intersection at a time. So we can do what we control, one of these by one of these. So you could do content by readiness, which is the one that we as teachers are so accustomed to doing because we constantly are doing these assessments and we are like, okay, this is the level of reading that they're at. So we're going to give them a book that is at that level, and that's what we're going to do, right? So we're going to differentiate based on their readiness, but this is something that we do all the time. We could do content by interest, right? So if we have a student in our classroom and we're wanting to read, right? And we're like, hey, you know what? We need to do something we need to do the difference between fiction and nonfiction book. Then you know what? You can take that content and you're like, we need to differentiate and see what the differences are. And I have a student who's really interested in dinosaurs. So I'm gonna do Danny and the dinosaur, right? That would be a fiction story. Then you can actually go and you can read a nonfiction book about dinosaurs and you can do those comparisons, but it would be based on that child's interest, right? You do have your content, but you have interest. You can also do the process. So the way that you get to it would be one way to differentiate, right? You can do this by the interest. Again, the process. Would you want to read? You're going to choose one book that is fiction, one book that's nonfiction, and you tell me, and it would be based on the child's interest because they can choose it, right? We can do only one intersection at a time, okay? So we can do the product by the readiness, product by interest, or product by learning profile, process by one of these, or content by one of these. We cannot have more than one intersection. So you're gonna have two things, right, that are intersecting, and that's it. We can't do more than one at a time. So I wanna take a look at this lesson plan that's on your screen. It's handout number 5. So if you want to see it, if it's not clear enough for you on the screen right now, you can always look at handout number 5. So take a couple of minutes to read through it and try to decide, what is the point of intersection? How are they differentiating in this lesson plan? And so you'll look at describe a story, event, or character in a story, and then take a look at the tiering that's going on. How are they tiering? So the standard is to describe a story, event, or a character. And then for the below level learners, they're going to ask questions. How do the children help each other in the story? What are some of the events that the children do together? What does it mean to put our heads together? What is the favorite event in the story? Okay, for on-level learners, whoa, sorry guys. For on-level learners, you're going to discuss the story, especially the idea presented that people share with each other in completing tasks. And you're going to make 2 larger circles, label the first one you, the second one me. You're going to put all the activities in the character you does in the first circle, and all the things that me does in the second. And in the space in the circle, suggest the ways that these 2 characters could put their heads together and dream the same dream. Okay, so it's a little bit more difficult. They're not just asking flat out questions that can just be found in the text. They're doing a little bit harder, right? Trying to see how they can work together. And then on level 3, above level learners, Read the story to yourself in a group. Discuss how the story is about friends who put their heads together and dream the dream. As a group, think of the activities that could fit in the story. So this one is tiered in process. So the way that they're getting to it, it's the process by their readiness, right? So you have your above, your on, and your below levels, and you're tiering that process. And then I see Sharon saying that in tier 1, there's teacher support. Tier 2, students help with reading support. And then tier 3, students read on their own. Okay, here's the next one. We have a language arts assignment. This is kindergarten. And so let's take a look here. They do not give us the answer. So the key concept is retelling parts of stories demands listening to the details closely. Okay, tier 1, look at what they have here. Visual learners. These students will discuss 4 main events in the story and will choose one event and draw a picture. Auditory learners. These students will discuss 4 events in the story and will prepare a skit of one of these events. And tier 3, kinesthetic learners. These students will discuss 4 events in the story and will build the 3 houses with materials in the classroom: straw, sticks, and bricks. Okay, and the assessment is the products will be assessed according to how well they retell the story, and at the end of the designated time, students will share their products. What do you think that they are differentiating with? What is that point of intersection? This lesson is tiered in blank according to blank. So Sharon, I do see that you're saying visual, kinesthetic, auditory learning, and learning styles, right? So what would that fit into? Is it the content, the process, or the product according to readiness, interest, or learning profile? Okay, the product by what do you think? Right, Robin, awesome. So A. Riley and Robin, perfect. You did get it. You got it spot on. It is the product by the learning profile. So they were each making a different product based on how they like to learn, right? And things that that help them. So some of them are kinesthetic, some of them are auditory, some of them are visual learners. So they're using that to help them. Okay, this is a little bit lengthier. This is grade 6, right? The key concept is matter can be described by its physical properties, including measurements of its mass, volume, and density. And then we go to tier 1, below level learners. Students at this level will perform the investigation different depths on page 150 through 151 of the Science for Fun experiments. In this activity, students will make a hydrometer and test several liquids. First, have them test the hydrometer in water, marking that level on the device. Is to use when testing liquids. It should be displayed on a table or chart. Students may simply mark whether the hydrometer floated higher or lower in the other liquids than it did in water. So they're just kind of testing water against other liquids, right, with the hydrometer. On level learners, there's a bit of preparation necessary for the tier 2 and tier 3 investigations, where based on layering the unknown from discovery, density, clear up, step-by-step provided for this activity in the book with materials, directions for preparation, teacher notes, and blackline masters. The objective for on-level learners is for them to grasp the concept of density and to express that understanding in their own words. There are no mathematical calculations involved. So this is going to be your on, and then this is the one. Remember, we're talking about make sure you know what you need to know if you're going to tier based on their levels. Then you're going to know what's that baseline. So this is what they need to do. And then above level. For the above level learners, the students will calculate density and should be able to explain the meaning of density and how it differs from weight. So what is it that they're doing? Are they differentiating by content, process, or product? You're kind of breaking up. Let me check the chat. they're kind of all using the hydrometer, right? So I really wouldn't say it would be the product. Somebody's trying to talk, I think, but it's breaking up pretty bad. So I don't think it would be product. We would probably say they are doing what? What would the actual thing that is being, the process? That's right. Because they are all using a hydrometer. They're all expected to kind of do similar stuff with it, but the actual work that they're doing is just a little bit, it's tweaked, right? They're all kind of doing more or less based on what they're supposed to do, but it's a little bit different. It's kind of tweaked. So that would mean that it's being tiered by what? The process is being tiered by the what? The students, and I'm looking at chat if anybody's writing. Do y'all give up?
Good job, Robin. You got it.
Readiness. Yes,
Yes.
definitely. It's the process by, yes, let's give him a round of applause, guys. That was excellent. Yes, Robin, it's the process by the readiness, right? So we saw that they kind of are looking at doing something very similar. It's just the way that they get there is a little bit different, and it's based on the student's readiness. Okay, and here's the next one. This is measurement. So we're looking at mathematics. The key concept is students estimate measurement characteristics of objects. And then we're going to take a look. Oops. We're going to take a look. Here we have, this is not it, guys. My computer's kind of going crazy right this second. Oh, here we go. Students estimate measurement characteristics of objects. So tier 1 is length, tier 2 is area, tier 3 is weight, and tier 4 is capacity. Okay, so let's take a look. It says students in each tier will complete the following activities with respect to their subset. Create a table for recording estimates and measurements. Estimate their characteristic for each item in both the imperial and metric systems and record the estimates in their tables. Next, have the students measure and record in both systems the characteristics for each item using an appropriate device, and have each tier share their results with their class. So here's the assessment. After the students share their estimates and measurements, have them work with members of their tier to answer in writing a series of questions about the relationships among the estimates and measurements, and/or about the relationships between American and metric systems. So,
Rebecca, can I say something to help? Looking at under background, that last paragraph says have students select a characteristic they are interested in estimating and measuring for a subset of the collection. These subsets could be selected by each interest group. So I'm kind of giving you a hint to help you figure out what are we, what's the according to part. Because I think some of you might have some difficulties with that part to figure out how are we tiering it?
And I also want to kind of point to the assessment that they're all going to basically do the same thing. It's just with their own area that they chose, right? So what is it that they are differentiating? So keeping in mind, they're kind of doing the same. Helen, you got the second part correct, the interest, right? But the content is measurement. So they're all expected to kind of do the same steps, but what they're going to be doing is going to be different based on what? Their interest, right? Okay, so the only reason that the stuff that they're actually going to create is going to be different isn't because the content is different. It's because, yes, Helen, it's the product. So what they're making is only going to be different because they're basing it on their interest, right? That's the only difference that it's gonna have, is that if I want to work on length or somebody wants to work on weight, That's the only difference between our product. So our product is basically the outline is here, but the only difference is going to be that I chose length and somebody else chose weight. Awesome. Good job. So yes, it was the process by the interests. Sorry. Let's take a look at working with coins, right? So let's take a look. The rationale. Tiered lessons blend assessment and instruction. Tiering allows them to begin learning where they are and move on. So they're giving you resources needed. 12 envelopes that can be labeled and identified using non-ranking identifications, such as colors, various stamps, designs, plastic coins, or record sheets or cards for each student. So level 1, envelopes will have pennies and one other coin with sums of 20 cents. Level 2, envelopes will have nickels, dimes, and pennies with sums to 50 cents. And level 3, envelopes will have quarters, nickels, dimes, and pennies with sums to $1. Okay. And then here's an explanation of the activity. You're going to arrange coins in response paper from highest value to lowest. You're going to trace and draw the coins in a row in value order. Write the value of each coin and count the value and write it to the right of the row of coins. And ask your partner to listen to read to your response and check your work. The assessment is students can self or partner correct and keep center checklists to track mastery. What do you all think this would be? So they told us this is differentiating, already we know by readiness levels, right? But what is it that they're differentiating? And I want to say it can't really be the process, because the process is exactly the same for each one, right? It's just different readiness skills. So what do you think? Would it be content or product? Do we have somebody in the chat?
Yes, Samantha, good job. You got content. Yes, the content, it is differentiated by content because we're not looking at the process or the product. And it's by their readiness. How, because if you're really low, if you're a low student, below student, you may not know your quarters, dimes, and nickels yet, but you do know the penny. So they're looking at their readiness of the different coins that they can identify.
So Sharon says, at first I thought process because the coins are different, but process the same. It is definitely a product because the coins values are different. So it could be the product, but remember, product is basically based on, like you were saying, right? And they can be kind of muddy. That's what we had talked about when we went through it. We're like, well, but sometimes it could be, and they're like, yeah, sometimes they kind of will start to overlap. But I do want to say it is the content only because I've been a first grade teacher for so long, and I'm moving to pre-K 3. But I only want to say that because I know the content, and I know that at first grade, they only need to know up to a certain amount, right? And then once they go to second grade, they start working with dollars. So I do want to say, like, this is content because what I need to teach in my class is not necessarily up to $1. I need to know coins, right? And different coins, different values, and adding income. Yeah. So there's that, but then there's also, like, you're talking about what you're actually going to make. So they might, but what you're going to look at when you're actually making your lessons is you're going to focus on one intersection. So you are going to purposefully, like, say, you know what, this is the one intersection that I want to focus on. It might be kind of muddy in certain places. Like you're saying, it could be the product because they're all making different things because of what they're actually working on, but you are going to focus on one intersection. Okay, because if we start looking at all different intersections, it's going to be crazy. Yes, it's based on one. but then we're looking at, we can differentiate by content. So depending on where your students are, right? So we're looking at level 1, 2, and 3. You might have students who are above, below, and on level. So you might be giving the ones who are sums up to $1 to those students who are gifted and talented. Yeah, you got it? Okay. All right, so that's what we just did. We did the content by readiness. And then we're gonna go ahead and ask you if you could please stand up. We're going to do a true and false, and I'm gonna ask you to please stand and turn on your cameras so that we can play this game. It's just to review your content, but your points of intersection. So I do see Carol and Jamie have their cameras on. Tammy, thank you for participating. And I'm gonna go ahead and stand too. All right, so here we go. If it's true, you're gonna stand up. If it's false, you sit down. Are y'all ready? I'm gonna go ahead and do a countdown from 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, here we go. First one. If it's true, you stand up. If it's false, you sit down. You can have more than one intersection when differentiating lessons. So if it's true, stand up. If it's false, sit down. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Centers are an example of differentiation. Just centers by themselves. So I'm sitting because remember we said centers are a great way to incorporate differentiation, but centers by themselves do not mean you are differentiating. You could literally have, and it has happened where people have centers and they have the exact same thing at each center, right? All right, icons are necessary for tiering. So I want to say yes. Because remember, they help keep you organized and they help the kids know what it is that they need to be doing, what they're expected to do. And then the guiding principles of differentiation build upon each other. So remember the guiding principles, you're doing your assessment, respectful tasks, you have those flexible groupings, okay? And tiering levels are the same as RTI levels. That's right, because remember RTI is when you're looking at students who need additional help beyond what's available here in the classroom, right? You're doing your response to intervention, but you're reading your tiering levels that you're talking about when you're doing differentiation don't necessarily mean you're going to be referring. That's just somebody who might be struggling with that for that week. And then the next week they might be on level, right? That's why we have those flexible groupings.
Okay, so now we're going to look at a different way of differentiation. A lot of us have used choice boards before. I want you to tell me, using the reaction button, the thumbs up or thumbs down, is this considered a differentiated choice board? When we're thinking about differentiation, is this considered that type of a choice board?
And as a clue, remember everything you've been taught or that we talked about. Does it incorporate what you've been thinking, what we said needs to be in differentiated instruction?
So if your camera's on, you can give me a visual thumbs up, or you can use the reactions here at the bottom and give me a thumbs up if you think this is considered a differentiated choice board. Okay, I've got a couple people that have said that they think that this is a differentiated choice board. So let's take a look at the next slide. This is the choice board again, but we're adding something to it. We now have icons here. Think about how we've used icons in the past with tiering. Now, do you think that this is considered differentiated choice board based on using the icons?
I see Lisa, Tammy, Samantha, Jade, A. Riley. They're all giving you a thumbs up. Robin's giving us a thumbs down. Helen's giving us a thumbs up.
Okay, so the first example is what a lot of teachers give is here's just an array of things that you can choose from. If we're actually doing it differentiated, this right here with the icons is the choice board that you should be using. What do you think, based on what we've talked about before? So what do you think these icons represent? Can someone unmute themselves and tell me? On this one, we've got a music note, a house, and some colored pencils. What do you think those icons represent?
The different types of modes of the, I guess, the authentication of the lesson. Like for example, it looks like the music icon is all about the writing. So for those kids that write, and then you have like for those of creating a diaphragm or drawing a picture, that's a visual representation maybe of what they're learning. And then the home icon, it involves some sort of performance, which is more, I would say, a tactile way. Maybe I'm wrong because I see that the house is another example. There's a writing element for the writing, which I see that was for the music also. So I'm a little confused. Sorry.
It is learning styles. We're looking at learning styles here. So they have like performing, if they like to get up and act. They have like those that like to do art and those who like to write. So they are using learning styles. But also remember, our icons show us the different levels, on level, below level, and above level.
Oh,
so that's where the icons come in. So we're looking at differentiated by readiness and by learning styles here. So let's take a look at the next slide so we can go ahead and look at how we structure a choice board. So your choice boards are always going to be 9 squares. You're going to have 3 sets of tiered lessons. Each can be based on one point of intersection, or each tiered lesson can be based on its own point of intersection, but on the same concept. And it includes the icons, which is where you're going to tier it based on level, below level, and above level. So let's look at the process. So we have the process of using choice boards. So work is done in assigned pairs. So we have a paired would be like someone who's above would work with someone who's on level. Someone who is on level would work with someone who's below level. Your very advanced can be used to assist, but I would not pair them with a low level student because they get easily frustrated when they're working with someone who's really, really low. And they tend to also do most of the work. So we want to make sure that it's an equal pair. So above and on below. So each student will receive 2 symbols. This denotes the choice they can make. So I would tell a student, okay, you are going to be a colored pencil and a home. So they know that they're going to choose one from colored pencil and from home. One choice is going to be on their own. And then the other is going to be picked with their partner from the symbol they share. They do that activity on their own, together. So I'm going to say you're going to do a colored pencil on your own. So you choose one of the colored pencil activities, and you're going to do that one by yourself. But I'm going to pair you with Billy, for instance, And you guys are going to choose one under the home icon. And then they're going to choose one together that they're going to work on that is one of the home icons. And another
Carol?
piece is part of the grading. Yes.
Carol, Tammy is having, she's not sure where to find this in the participant handbook.
Oh, this is on page 10 of your participant handbook. I'm sorry. It's at the lower right-hand corner as well. So the talking about choice boards is on page 10. So one piece that we do talk about is grading it. There's two different grades. They're going to grade it on a rubric together, but then they're also going to turn it into the teacher, and then the teacher's also going to grade it. So they can grade it and say, well, I think that we should get this grade. And then the teacher can look at it and say, oh, I agree. Or, you know, maybe we need to up that grade or lower it. Or it can also be individualized grades too. Especially when you're doing group work, you have to be very careful with grading on group work based on the group. Because if one person's doing all the work, the other person may not feel like it's a good idea for the other partner to get the same grade because they didn't do anything. So you're going to have two separate grades for this. Let me look at the handbook. I have it in front of me. Sorry, I'm looking in the handbook to make sure I have. Choice boards is on page 10. It says Part E, choice board. And it gives you an example of a choice board in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give you a little time. And this is actually on page 12 of your handbook. And it gives you some working space to fill in your charts. Actually, this is page 11 in your handbook. I'm sorry. This part on the choice creating it is on page 11. You also have some handouts on choice boards as well. There's a handout on 10A and 10B that you can use, and also some examples of multi-intelligence on the last 2 pages that you can use to help you. You're going to start creating a choice board. You may not get it finished, but kind of get an idea of the choice board that are of the skill that you want to work on or the activities. You're going to select a concept and create a choice board based on that. And just share out just some examples of how you're going to do that and how you would, what symbols you would use, how would you pair them. And again, you can use page 10 and 11 in your handbook, and in the handbook part or the handout part, 2A and 2B can help you to create that as well.
Okay, so we're gonna give you about 5 minutes. Do not worry if you do not get it completely finished. It's just kind of a jumping off point. So that way you know where you're gonna be going and what you're gonna be planning for, okay? I don't know why you keep getting sent to them. And then somebody keeps. Okay, y'all, we do want to just make sure that we clarify when you're looking at your handbook, you're going to look down on the bottom right corner of the actual page in front of you. That's going to give you the page number, because I think the mix-up was you were looking at what slide it was or what page it would be on your actual deck, and that wasn't correct. So make sure you're looking down on the actual bottom right corner of the page that's in front of you. Okay, so what were some of the choice board activities that y'all came up with? And tiering, and tell me about your icons.
honestly, in that short amount of time, without having an objective to create a choice board for, it was kind of hard to get started. It was a little too open-ended for us to get a real handle on it.
Yeah, we had the same situation in room 4. We're like, okay, so where do we start? We knew we needed to create leveled like 3 different things for 3 different things, but then we couldn't decide what the thing was. We needed some scaffolding right there.
Right, an objective to scaffold for.
Right.
So when you start off on your choice board, kind of keep that in mind too. If it's very broad, you're going to have to narrow it down, and you might think of your choice board as something that you're working through with a unit, right? So let's say we're talking about measurement, right? So one of the things we were talking about was measurement. Then you're going to talk about like first grade measurement was introducing them to the units. So what's one thing that you could do? Okay, measuring something with certain units, right? Then moving on from there to like on level might be, okay, you have something that is small. How can you measure something that is big? What could you do? You know, transferring that knowledge. So going from there to like, okay, I know that I can measure this with paper clips, right? But it's going to be kind of impossible to measure the window behind me with paper clips because they're just not going to stick together very well. We might choose to use something else, and kind of introducing that, going from there and scaffolding your or tiering your lessons from there. But definitely keep in mind, choice boards work best if you're talking about like a unit, right? You're talking about a unit, either a weekly type thing or a unit thing, because you're not going to be doing your choice boards like every day. So you're not going to be switching them out every day, right? And then also you're not going to be doing, remember we talked about differentiation, doesn't have to be every day either, because before you even get to the choice boards, before you even get to like the tiering activities, you're going to have some sort of a lecture type stuff, right? Where you are giving instructions, where you are teaching the stuff that you're going to have them do within these choice boards. So yeah, we do realize 5 minutes is not enough to complete a choice board, but it does kind of get you thinking like, hey, in that mindset, hey, you know what? I need to narrow it down to this theme. This is what we're going to be working on. And then thinking about, hey, these are the 3 levels that I have. What am I going to expect for them to do? And you're kind of incorporating also like, this is your standard, right? This is your standard. How are you going to level up and level down for those students? And tiering up and tiering down. Okay. All right. So just to kind of reiterate what it was that we had talked about at the beginning of the session, we do know that differentiated instruction does have these components, right? It is qualitative. So we're looking at quality, not quantity. So it doesn't really matter if you throw a whole bunch of activities out there. If it's not something that is of quality that's going to help with your students' learning, then it's really not worth it, right? If you're better off getting smaller amounts of activities that are really going to hone in on those skills that they're trying to refine than to have a whole mess of them that aren't really getting them to that mastery. Offers tiered lessons in a variety of varying degrees of difficulty dealing with a similar content. So we do have content that we need to teach, right? But we're going to get them there depending on, like we said, their interest, their readiness, and their learning profile. So we're going to use those to help us, right? Allows students to choose with teacher direction the route of their learning. So yes, part of it could be the choice boards, right? So incorporating those choice boards does give them some ownership over their learning, and they're able to say, hey, I want to do this, or I want to try this project. I want to create this product to show you what I know. Provides a variety of assignments within the units of instruction. So we're not always going to be doing paper, a worksheet. It's not always just going to be a worksheet where you're just filling in the blanks. There's going to be different ways that you can show what you're learning. So I know one of the favorite things that my daughter did this year was she had created a diagram to talk about one group of Native Americans that she was learning about. So I remember she was loving making the corn, out of clay and the little animals and stuff to show what their houses look like, what their dressing, their dress was like, what their animals that they would have around them. So like their horses and then the different crops, and that they lived around the river. So making sure that you're giving them some variety, because while some kiddos are really, really great at writing essays, some of them are not, and they might actually have strengths that can even deepen that understanding for other students, because with their artistic skills, they might be able to help others learn too, right? And so I just want to ask, do you have any other clarifying questions that we could answer for you about tiering or choice boards?
I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
When we were doing the choice board and attempting to tiering, as we were selecting what activities, it was based more on what activities we find difficult to do. Is there a source for what specific activities are lower level, medium level, and higher level?
You could maybe go through Bloom's taxonomy, because you can look and see the difficulty, right? The depth and there's also the depth and complexity models. So you can look at that, because they they go from like observation and they go to like changes over time. They do, so those are typically used in my district with like the GT learners, but they are great, they're like best practices across the board. So look up elements of depth and complexity, and you can pull up a chart that'll tell you like, these are the things that you can incorporate within your lessons. So you could do Bloom's taxonomy, or you could do elements of depth and complexity.
Also in your handbook, at the last page of the handbook, there is a multiple intelligence grid, and that can give you some ideas as well on different ways to differentiate based on what they like, you know, how they learn as well. That might give you some examples too. And just by looking at those, you can say, oh, well, I know a low-level student may not be able to create a bulletin board, but they can create a chart. So you can look at that as well.
Well, you've got the problem of complexity by design of the different activities, but you also have students' learning interests. So a low-level student might be really good at writing music, or music may be their thing, where reading wouldn't. And so you might, how do you deal with the student might choose something at a more complex level because that's where their interests lay, even though their other skill levels might be lower? Is that part of the choice board thing, that students can go from a low, medium, or higher level activity based on interest?
That's where you go back and you look at, you know what, you might be able to level up if you're working with somebody who's at one level above you, right? But you're also going to make sure that those assignments that you're giving to them, like we said, are respectful tasks. So you're not going to let them have an icon. Remember how she was saying for the choice boards, you're going to have an icon, right? So let's say I'm a low level, right? I'm lower level, right? I'm having some trouble. So my icon might be, you know, this one house, right? And I get another icon, which is the next step above me, maybe a music note, right? So I get to work on, I get to choose the one that's at my level, right? I have to choose one here, and I have to choose one with a partner that is one level above me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're not ever going to give them an icon that will be like the highest level, because that would just be way too much, right? But we don't mind them going a little bit further up. Like you're saying, songwriting. I want to say you don't necessarily have to be able to read to be able to write music. There's people who are just wonderful at playing music without having to be able to read or write very well. Exactly. They just are very good at that. They have enough like rhyming skill to be able to do that, right, orally. So that would be something that you can definitely put on there, right? Because you're not necessarily having them, when you're saying write a song, that doesn't even necessarily mean that they have to write it down. They might just sing it, you know?
Exactly.
So yeah. I mean,
I was also going to say that if you have a student who really wants to do an activity and it's not on their level, having the student come and talk to you and say, Miss or Mr. or, you know, Sir, I want to do this one because this is what I like. So then you can talk to them and say, okay, can you complete that whole assignment, or let's tweak it a little to make it where you're able to do it independently or with your group too. So it's really a teacher choice. Like if they really want to write a song, but it's not tiered at that level that they're at, you can have that conversation with them and make those changes as well.
And then again, like we said, if they're working with somebody else, that other person might be able to scribe it for them. If you're expecting them to have something turned in, like written down, they can have their partners scribe for them, right? So kind of think about all of the ways that we can, that are already built in to help them.
Or tech, they can add the tech in.
Yeah, we could do text to speech, which is what a lot of kiddos are doing. I know my first graders learned how to do that right away when I started asking them to write sentences on their tablets. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And
Any
Jamie's going to be sharing the evaluation. So while you're asking questions, you can start filling that out as well.
And then just any other questions from anybody else to clarify? Okay. And then I do want to say thank you so much for spending part of your summer break with us. We know it's hard to get up when you've just gotten out of school for the summer, but we do really appreciate your time being here and your effort of participation. Okay, so thank you.
And Carol's going to be doing another session next Wednesday from 10 to 12. Carol, do you want to just kind of give a little blurb about what you're going to be doing next week?
We're going to be discussing cultural responsive pedagogy. And I know this one's going to be a hot topic because of what was just voted on in the legislative session. So hopefully I can have some of you guys come and we can talk about how to incorporate those being culturally responsive into our classrooms.
So after you complete the evaluation, you are free to go. And we actually do read the evaluation results. So please be open and honest with us on how we can, improve in what we're doing. And if you're interested in next week's session, be watching your email. We'll be sending you a registration for it. Or if you're on Facebook, you can go to the Texas AFT Bridges Institute for Professional Development page, and you will, under the events, you will see the event for next week with a link for you to register for it.
Thank you for coming and spending time with us.
Hey, Riley, unfortunately, Zoom doesn't allow us to have like an open-ended thing, but if you have a particular comment you would like to make, then just respond to the email and with the Zoom link that you were emailed, and that comes directly to me. And then I will share that with the trainers on your comments and concerns.
Okay, thank
So
you.
feel free to do that one, because it doesn't allow us. That's the one thing I don't like about Zoom, is it doesn't allow open-ended questions.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Evans, I will send that to you right now. Okay, Mr. Evans, I just sent it to you, so check your email and it should be there. 100% have voted, so I am going to end the polling. All right, you all are free to go. And then Rebecca, Carol, just stay on for just a second.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Okay. I've just kind of gotten to where at the end where I just remove. Oh, hang on. Let me stop the recording.